Welcome to the Prime People Podcast. I'm your host, Justin Konikow. If you're new to this channel, welcome. This is where I bring on experts to talk about industry topics that I know are burning in your chest. Doesn't matter if you're in the industry or not. We happen to be in the space of real estate, but a lot of what we talk about transcends any business and will affect even the consumers. Today, we are talking about the Metaverse. The announcement from Facebook of changing their name to Meta, we're going to extrapolate what that means because them changing their name to Meta doesn't necessarily mean Metaverse. The Metaverse is much larger than just Facebook. So we're going to talk about that. And I was thinking about who could I bring on this episode that can really speak to that topic. And then I realized one of my good buddies from Clubhouse, Mr. David Morrell, is in that space. He owns Greater Property Group and he's navigating the marketplace in real estate. They're doing deals in crypto. I know he understands this space more than a lot of people. So I'm like, Dave, can you come on? Maybe we can talk about the Metaverse as like the high level topic, but we're going to talk about what crypto and blockchain means for real estate. We're going to talk about the landscape of the future to prep you. That's the goal. What's the problem here? Things are changing very quickly. A lot of people don't understand them. We don't necessarily understand everything about them, but if as a community, we can come together, this is where we can level up. And I literally feel like I've spent hundreds of hours with this dude, and every time he speaks, you can tell he's one of the real ones. So this is going to be one of the best episodes, I'm sure, to date. If you want to go and see all the future or past episodes, by all means, if you want the future episodes, hit that subscribe and notification button. We have some incredible guests. We've had Sirhan, Scott McGilvery, many others on this podcast. And nonetheless, let's get right into the episode so you can get right to the value. Welcome to the Prime People Podcast, where we cover all things that got us to where we are today, our team building strategies, the marketing and sales tips that we've learned through thousands of transactions, productivity tips, ways to really just hold yourself accountable to accomplishing what you want to accomplish, and all things content creation, personal development, and not to mention we have some of the best guests on the planet. We definitely do, and today's guest is Mr. David Morrell. How are you doing, David?
Good, Justin. How are you? I didn't realize this was like a full-blown production. I feel honored to be here. Spent a lot of time with you. I respect the hell out of you. So honored to be here, my man.
Yeah, I appreciate you so much. And like my face is red today because my new camera is not linking to the new Mojave OS. David said his camera's flipped. So I'm like, we're talking about tech and our tech's a bit of a disaster today, isn't it?
Yeah, like it's my first time using StreamYard. It reversed my camera. I have no ring light. So I don't know how we're going to do this. Hopefully we get through it. We're going to ham hawk it, but I know we're going to get through it.
All right. We've done that in the past too. You know, a Clubhouse is an interesting app where there's all kinds of dynamics that happen on it, but you see through lines of conversation and you can tell expertise when you hear it over and over. I think you're very similar to myself where you'll sit back in a lot of rooms and probably listen more than you talk. Yep. But then every time you did get up and speak, you definitely know what you're talking about. And I think let's get right into it. I mean, we're talking, the title of this episode is the Metaverse. Reason I titled it that is I think there's a lot of misconceptions about what Meta is in terms of Facebook changing their name to Meta, what the actual Metaverse is. And then I do want to get into talking about crypto, blockchain, what it may mean for real estate. We've got about 45 minutes. I feel like I could talk about this for 3 hours with you because it's in depth, but Meta to Facebook. Let's talk about that transition first. So what did you feel when you heard that announcement the first time?
Yeah, this is a really interesting one. It's not like they slipped it under the rug or something like that. But this is not just a rebrand. This is a completely different. This is a pivot in terms of what they're going to focus on. It is social for sure, but the Metaverse itself, and then changing the name to Meta is kind of like owning that space. And of course, you're dealing with a behemoth of a company there. But my first thoughts were like, wow, like they really pivoted hard based on the bad press, right? And I think they did need a rebrand. I think that's I think that was necessary for them. I think this one's interesting for me. I mean, it's not like the first time like a social media company has rebranded. Snapchat did it actually. I think it was in 2016. I'm trying to remember, but
after Facebook was like going after Snapchat and stealing their ideas, like Zuckerberg does it quite often where he'll just let somebody else ideate, come up with something he sees gets traction, and then come into that space and try and just dominate it, right?
I'm telling you, Picasso said it best, good artists copy, great artists steal. And I think that's true. But for the most part, this is really interesting because they put $10 billion. They've allocated $10 billion in the next year just to this tech. So I believe Facebook actually owns Oculus. I think
Yeah, they
own
do.
Oculus.
Yeah, they bought it 4
Yeah.
years ago. I remember, I think it was Gary Vee was talking about it, that
Mhm.
AR, like augmented reality, is probably going to be the first transition. Google Glasses tried, but didn't really work. But like, picture your windshield in your car has your GPS information, everything else. That'd actually be probably more efficient. And Facebook's going a step further, saying, okay, we're going to do that, but the headset, complete virtuality, matrix in your brain, eventually is what we're all headed towards, right?
And then I thought about, Elon Musk with the Neuralink or whatever he's doing there, where it actually plugs into your brain. So all this sci-fi stuff we've been seeing in the movies and on TV over the last few years, it's becoming a reality. It's like it's manifesting itself in a weird way. Ready Player One is an absolute reality according to what their end game is, right? If you've seen that movie, right, where everybody lives in the metaverse. I find it really interesting because we've talked about this. I mean, we lived off Zoom for the last few years, or last couple of years for sure through this whole thing. But if you can imagine going to an event or sitting in a meeting, in VR, right, with but not being in the same physical location, that's where they're putting all the money and the tech and everything else into. So I mean, when you asked me initially about the rebrand, it was like, yeah, it was necessary. Meta, I'm not crazy about the name, to be totally honest with you. The logo is ridiculous. If anybody,
you're a design guy too, right? So I mean, you're probably just losing your mind over.
I looked at it. They made this on Fiverr. That's what I thought when I saw it. I just went, wow, man, like, like $1 billion company. And it took them 5 seconds to make. I'm sure we'll see some iterations of it over time. I don't mind the logo too much.
Yeah,
I don't mind the logo terribly, but the actual font, etc., and the name, I'm not too crazy about. But it's funny, since that announcement, there's been all these other companies have now announced that they're getting into the metaverse, heavily. You got Microsoft. I think they're doing something which I don't know what Microsoft's going to do. It could be an Excel spreadsheet with avatars. I don't know what it is, but
that shuts down on you randomly for no reason.
Yeah, exactly. So that
I'm sure Apple's going to take a run. I heard Apple and Google are both kind of going into that space, and they're talking open source, where Facebook is saying we're going to have it open source. We're going to let everybody program on it. Historically, Facebook has not been inclusive, where Apple and Google, if they came into the space and say made the hardware accessible and free, well, all of a sudden the users are the value in that relationship, right?
Yeah, well, Microsoft just isn't sexy to me. Apple is.
Yep.
Any guys like you and I who have a heavy design eye, obviously, like that we're attracted to that. I heard Nike's getting into it, so they're offering. Yeah, Nike's getting into it, so you can wear Yeezys or whatever.
That's so crazy.
In the metaverse.
Yeah. Well, I've heard Tesla is doing auto dealerships. Like it's pretty wild, right?
I also heard Dropbox wants to get in, which is good for Dropbox because I think they got hammered, by Google over the last couple of years. But I used to like Dropbox. I love Dropbox. So easy to use, but they're getting into the metaverse. I mean, there's so many applications to this, actually. I was talking to somebody yesterday about it. We were talking about comedy shows. You can imagine going to a comedy show in the metaverse now. Dude, this camera's messing with me. Let me just,
You're good. Yeah, you're fine. It looks okay on my end.
But anyways, yeah, it's such an interesting discussion, and the bigger discussion for guys like you and I is like, what does this mean to the real estate industry, right? What does that mean? So it's one thing, it's going to change the way we, meet with people, converse with people, have meetings, and entertainment, all that type of stuff. I also think it's a little bit weird to me too, because people were referring to, I think it was Pokemon Go, right? Because that was the first kind of augmented reality you had on your phone, where you go.
That got consumer traction too, right? Like you had the general public downloading it and playing with it.
But what's funny is the CEO of that game, and I'm trying to remember the name of I can't remember the name of the company that created Pokemon Go, but they're actually railing against the metaverse.
Really?
Surprisingly, yeah, they think it's a bit much. The whole the AR was really interesting, but they actually want people to go outside, right, and move around and meet people and have fun with it. That was they kind of incorporated the two, whereas the metaverse is completely inside of this. Right. So I thought that was interesting, actually, when the CEO came out and said that he wasn't crazy about it. So.
I do think that the world with augmented reality as an efficiency makes a little bit more sense. And we'll talk about, blockchain efficiencies down the road as well. Because I do think contract working with lawyers, lenders, like the efficiencies of the blockchain and being able to have a transparent ledger and an organized deal flow will be a godsend to our industry, because it's a disaster right now. But, that transition of like, okay, well, if I just put on a headset and I'm staying in my house for 18 hours a day, what does that do to me as a human being? I think that's the initial fear that most people have. And it's understandable, right? Like, if they're Bezos or Zuckerberg, or all these guys are trying to force us to put these devices on, you're going to get a guttural pullback from people. But what does that world look like when, from a convenience aspect, I can have an Oculus Quest in my office, see Matterport scans of every one of my listings. A buyer can come to my office for an hour, walk through 15 of my listings in VR, or if they have a headset at home, they could just go through 15 of my listings and save themselves half a day of driving around. Like, there is an efficiency, I think, of technology that's coming down the pipeline.
100%. I think you were already doing this, weren't you? You were doing some sort of VR.
Yeah. So when we were on this call, you heard me ordering floor plans before we started. That's actually, we own our own Matterport system. So we scan every property we do in 3D, and then we actually host it online. So if you have an Oculus, you can actually go to our website and put it on, hit the little 3D button, and you can walk through these houses. It's wild.
That's dope.
Tech isn't quite there, though. I don't really push people to do it with headsets because it's not a great UI. Like, it doesn't show it as high quality as the property is. It's not high def yet. It's just like, it's there, but it's not quite there. But I also think from a builder's perspective, let's say I'm doing an amazing condo in Montreal, a city we both love, but I want to go through and select countertops, paint colors, cabinet colors, all these things. It's going to be where you can actually go and have a color palette on your device and go like this and start swiping through and walk through the unit. I do think there's going to be a huge value in that space.
Yeah, I've seen the staging applications to it, et cetera. I remember the first time I saw a Matterport video, I was blown away, right? Like, mapping out the property and then being able to click through and map through it. And I thought that was crazy tech for real estate, right? So agents and teams and brokerages that incorporate that and embrace it, I think, are doing a great service to their clients. I think it creates demand too, which is, it's marketing 101, so it's funny how far we've come. And you don't like the Oculus going through the Matterport?
No, it's the quality issue. So you know what I'll do? Actually, the fun thing about StreamYard is I can do this pretty quick. So let me just share my screen really quick here. I actually pulled up a Matterport while we're talking, so I can actually show people what we're talking about here. So let me expand this so you can see it nice and pretty. So this is a listing I have on Colburn Street. There's the Chip and Joanne Gaines book. Beautiful reno. You like design? Check out Andy Roth on Instagram. He's a metal and woodworking designer. Him and his wife, Sylvie, she owns Maison Sylvie. They did this entire flip with Dave Bell, who's a designer. So really cool design. Yeah. But the problem is it looks good now, right? Yeah. When you put on the Oculus, can you see how when I'm turning it, like, you lose a little bit of quality there? It kind of gets grainy. I don't love the UI experience from that perspective. So if you click this little button and you click view in VR, you got to have the Quest 2 to actually be able to do it. Again, I'm a big quality guy as well. And what I don't love about the way the Oculus does it is it's like, it's cool to be in it, but it doesn't make me actually feel like I'm standing in the unit. But I don't think they're far away from that transition. I think, fiber optics will make a huge difference, solid internet connections everywhere. And then the device maybe having a little bit more storage or bandwidth, light switch will go off and it'll be right there.
I guess Matterport pretty much owns that space. Like, I don't know anybody that competes with them really.
There's iGuide is another company I know that does it. They're proprietarily owned by another company, but I also know, like, again, this is where I think the future is going, where I think everything's going to be open sourced. Yeah. Like, we can go into a deeper conversation about communities, right? We talk about the different communities we maybe partake in. Nobody owns me. Nobody owns you. We can flow fluidly through the communities that we're in. We can collaborate with people online and in real life, in real equity projects and partnerships to whatever capacity that we want, but you don't work for any real one person. You're your own entity. I think technology is going to be the same aspect. We're like, yeah, maybe Matterport kind of owns the space, but when the Insta360 cameras catch up and they're fast enough, what does that really mean? Or when the iPhone decides that they're going to have cameras on both sides, which guess what, they already do. And this gets good enough that I can walk through a space, scan it in 3D, upload it, and now it's in my Oculus. Now what does Matterport do, right?
Well, the other thing too is like hologram technology too doesn't seem that far away either. We were watching Iron Man do his thing, with the holograms, right? Like, and renderings and things like that and schematics. Like, you could see that happening already. Architecture software is getting, it's crazy what they can do with that. But now hologram imaging seems like could be a reality in the near future. I mean, if you're spending billions and billions of dollars in this space, the tech is going to just, it's just going to, compound, right? So we'll see what happens. I think it's exciting. I kind of like it. I kind of like where we're going with it. I mean, we're tech heavy anyway as a company.
Sure.
So, I mean, you probably like it as well, knowing you. So we'll see. We'll see.
Yeah. There's a little bit of a misconception out there that, I'm digital only. And I tell people, I'm like, I use digital to get to the physical. I actually talk to more people on the phone than you'd be shocked that I do, because to me, communication's communication. I try to be the same person online that I am offline. I look at tech as a tool. I think a lot of people look at it as a crutch, and that's the difference. I think guys like you and I will identify these. And like I said, we're going to talk about blockchain in a minute, as efficiencies to save me more time. So instead of me having to follow up with the lender 9 times, I can check the ledger and know exactly where the transaction is. Saves him time, saves me time, just live a better life, right? So I think technology is going to get there as well. We're talking Meta, which was the transition from Facebook to that company, Metaverse, which is essentially the world we already live in. Just right now we're using an archaic device to access it. We're literally like cavemen right now, tapping on a phone to communicate with people, and walking around talking on Clubhouse all day. Eventually, technology is going to catch up to the point where it's just going to be integrated, so I can focus on driving my car, and it's just like the radio. We're talking as well in terms of the devices, right? The Oculuses and what Facebook's trying to do. Let's talk about the digital workspaces, because you mentioned Zoom, and as a brokerage owner, let's talk real estate, right? To have agents and serve them in the highest capacity possible. Yes, having a bricks and mortar is nice. Is it efficient in today's workplace? Well, I think it's proving to people that their time's super valuable, and they'd rather hop on a Zoom, collaborate, live their life. But I do think there's an inherent value in having a physical location. So where do you think the bridge is in the new world of tech and real estate and the old world of collaborating and just getting belly to belly? Because I think there's value in both.
Yeah, I mean, well, right now, real estate is still a relationship business. You know that. So it is imperative that you get in front of people. That's a fact. But the reality is everything's changed, right? In the last few years, I've been in real estate. I think this is my 24th year now. So I've been in real estate a long time.
You look like you're 32. I'm like,
no, man, I'm old, man. I'm getting what they say, long in the tooth. I'm long in the tooth.
I got lots of gray hair, so we're good.
Dude, listen, man, I'm obsessive about my hair.
Shave it off. Your hair looks dope. It's all good.
But no, it's really interesting you asked about this question, because we're pretty passionate about this whole topic for a lot of reasons. Like we've always been kind of a disruptive brand anyway. I mean, the Greater Property Group as a brand has been around for, 10 years now, maybe something like that. So before that, we had run teams across the country in multiple cities, and we belong to a big box brand for the most part. We came from a space where, typically brokerage meetings didn't have a lot of value, to be honest with you, right? Sure. You get maybe 10 to 20% attendance on a Monday morning where they talk about all the things you can't do. They say, don't forget about Bolorama and the wine and cheese and things like that. All the things that honestly, all the things that don't move the needle on your business. And you got to remember at the time too, I'm not disparaging anyone in particular. I'm just talking about the value that brokerages provide, and of course we had very high producing teams, doing a lot of transactions, very high producing agents. And the reality was we saw a less of a need for bricks and mortar, to be honest with you. I think the first, where we first opened as a brokerage proper in Calgary, it was funny because we had a beautiful office. It overlooked the mountains in downtown. It was like a top floor It was fantastic. It was beautiful. The plumbing seized because no one went in there. No one used it. And what we found was, and we actually did the research on this. We found out that not only did the agents not want the office, it reduced overhead, obviously, and costs and things like that. But we also realized that clients no longer go to real estate offices. They will not meet agents at offices. The first meeting is usually at a Starbucks, the first property they're showing, or somewhere else, right? Or a development or something like that. So you can, and the funny thing is we were a boutique brokerage at the same time, right? So we were very highly curated. We believed that there were 3 things in particular that changed everything in real estate. And I've been saying this for years, and their data, as we know, right? We've given up all our data over the last few years. Shame on us. Shame on us as an industry. We've given up our data. Technology, as you know, has changed the way, everybody searches for information and finds agents, shops for real estate. And then the third component, which is probably the most important, the biggest change in our industry, it's not just the real estate industry, it's every industry. It's culture, what we call hacking culture, right? So the way people shop, how they reach out to sales professionals in any industry has all changed in the last few years. And this, agents are getting involved in the process later like a client or a consumer, a buyer, seller is involving an agent kind of later in the process. So they're online, they're looking at information, they're looking at comparables, market data. So, you need to not just grab attention, but you need to be in front of them when they do have a life event, because that's what essentially triggers a real estate transaction, is a life event, right? Get married, get divorced, have children move out of the house. If you can intersect with them when they have a life event, you're going to get that deal. It's like the key to the change room, illustration. But that being said, the way that people shop, and I think that's going to continue to change. I know you're highly successful, but we believe that, fewer and fewer teams, agents, and brokerages are going to do the lion's share of the transactions. That's why branding's so important. Yeah. That's why it's really cool what you're doing, right? And whatnot. But all of these things, when going through this whole process as a brokerage, this too, right? Like, where does it, the belly to belly, like you mentioned, yes, relationships are important, but more importantly, what do our consumers want and need? Sometimes it's bricks and mortar. If that's the case, great. But for the most part, I think bricks and mortar are a thing of the past. I've consulted with a few companies already that do want to get virtual, intentionally. And it's not that hard, to be honest with you. It's not that hard. But I mean, I guess it depends, right? Like if you're in a market where bricks and mortar are important, you see the need for it, then I think you should have it. I think keep it, But if you're some of these bigger metropolitan areas, offices aren't a thing anymore.
Yeah, it's very interesting conversation, because again, if you're talking about how we're structured, we change every year. We're always adapting, right? And we're going through a transition right now where I'm actively telling people, like, we're not a team. If you're watching this and you think I'm a team, we're not a team. Like, we run a platform that our agents come and work collaboratively within. There's not a single agent that works on my team that I need to be on my team. And my agents don't need me, right? Yeah. Truthfully, like, we don't need each other, but we're better than we are together. And when I think of the platform, I think of Prime. We have a bricks and mortar location, but it's not the be all end all. And not every single agent comes to the office all the time, but it's there as a resource, and it's our clubhouse, right? So like the production team is there today. They're getting all the camera work. It's a studio and it's an office. So the agents that are now getting into a lot heavier branding, which as a platform, we do try and support them and say, hey, listen, here's the infrastructure, but you don't have to put the Prime logo on everything that you do. Obviously, you have to adhere to RICO standards, but I want you to brand yourself. Like, people need to understand who you are and what you sell, and what you do is going to attract a different type of clientele than what I do. But the question that I think agents have to ask themselves is, the organizations they're going to, are they in a cultural alignment with them from a leadership perspective and where the investments are going? Because it's easy to say, well, I'm charging you a $200 a month office fee or whatever they're getting charged to have this space. And the agents say, well, like, I don't need the office. I don't need the space. It's almost like they need to look at the investments that they're making from a split, say, to the brokerage, or a fee that they're paying to the brokerage, in terms of what am I getting in terms of accountability, branding, logistical, administrative support, deals, like actual money coming to me that I didn't have before I was here. And if the answer is nothing, the problem that is hitting the industry is there's just too many options right now where they can just go off and do it on their own. And you'll have agents that are just happy to do that. And there's others where it's not worth their time to handle all the back end and all the logistics, and they just want to sell. But I think there's no right or wrong way to do it, but they need to educate themselves, right?
Yeah, you actually took the words out of my mouth, right? So like, our company's not a fit for everybody. We're fit for, a certain type of agent, same as you, right? Not a fit for everybody, but find out what you want, work backwards, see if it's a fit. I think that we live, again, going back to the fact that, not just consumers, but agents have access to more information. They have more, ways to generate leads themselves. That's not a thing anymore, right? So agents more and more these days are questioning, what do I get from my brokerage if I'm paying them fees, right? Yes, I have to have the logo on my business card according to law, but what am I getting from the brokerage? That's why we focus on, 4 things specifically that we think are really important to agents. And that's been kind of our pillars to drive our growth and drive the productivity of the agents. We think that we provide an insane amount of value. We focus on leads, overflow of business, unique selling propositions, branding and marketing, to your point. And then the 4th component is the training, coaching, and mentorship. We think that's super important. I think agents need that more and more these days than ever before, because to your point, things are changing fast and furious. You have to adapt. Some of the, and this, like some of these big companies, they're like, big cruise ships. When they have to pivot and make a change, it takes them forever to,
It's got to go through 9 different boards before anything can actually get done.
My man,
right?
It makes no sense, right? You need to be like a speedboat these days. That's a fact. You need to be a speedboat. And if you're not like a speedboat, you're going to be in trouble.
Well, get this, right? So like, and this is where collaboration comes in. I'm happy to share this openly online because try and catch me here, David. Good luck. One thing we implemented recently, David, you were talking about training, right? And it's huge for us. I do think a lot of agents will come, especially in a market like this. People get in the business, they think it's easy, but it is hard to get deals done in this marketplace. And I kept hearing the same conversation over and over. You're sending me all these leads. Fantastic. I bring people into my book of business. That's really how I mentor at where I am. But sometimes they get an overflow of leads and be like, I don't know what to say to these people. So then one of my guys who's amazing at cold calling, Kyle Henry, you've seen him all over the different podcasts, right? He's like, well, why don't I host like a little scripts and role play room every Monday to Thursday, 8:45 to 9 a.m. And we can just jam for 15 minutes, table a topic. We'll record it. We'll pull it in the Prime database. We have like 40 plus videos now in the database that agents can access and get like 10 plus years of education and just hundreds of calls, conversations that have formed organically over that time. And again, you talk about speed and efficiency. That's something that we can do because it came up and we're willing to solve the problem. But I love that you have the 4 pillars, man. Like you've identified that. You're the second guy this week that's talking to me about the branding piece of it. And I do want to stick on that for a second. Then we'll jump right into blockchain. So you were saying you focus on branding for your agents that work within your organization. What does that mean to you? And I guess, why does it matter?
Well, I'm actually super passionate about this as it relates to real estate. I mean, I don't like real estate branding, typical real estate branding, I guess you could say. I find it somewhat boring. It offers no value to clients and consumers. It doesn't give people a compelling reason to pick up the phone and call an agent when they see a logo and a name and a website. There's no reason to call. There's no reason to pick up the phone. Like, I don't know how many agents are in your marketplace exactly, where we operate. Toronto, for example, there's over 50,000 agents. Calgary's got 6,000 agents. Edmonton, I think 4,000. We're in Vancouver. We just opened the Vancouver brokerage, which we're really excited about.
And there's only like 4 on my radar in Calgary. There's a bunch in Toronto, but like not many, right?
Yeah. So, how are you differentiating yourself? So we have an in-house media team. You've seen, the media that we produce,
Sick.
right?
It's super slick.
It's got a really slick aesthetic. Contemporary is the word we hear. Sexy, disruptive for sure. So I've always been about looking what everybody else is doing, and then I go over here.
Well, your clothing matches your aesthetic, right?
Yeah.
The black jacket. I mean, it feels like I'm going out to like a super exclusive concert with you when I'm watching your stuff. You're pulling, Forbes, Riley, Exhibit, all these people on your podcast, and people are like, wow, like why is Exhibit on a real estate podcast? But they don't understand the world that we live in nowadays, right?
Yeah. So to that, I'd like to just unpack that for just a second here, if that's okay.
Sure. Go nuts.
I'm an art collector for one thing, heavily involved in music and some other things. So we bring a lot of those elements and we bring them back to real estate if we can and apply it. So, early on in our evolution as a brand, we were doing some really crazy videos and collateral pieces and things like that people were kind of like raising an eyebrow at, and they were going, wait, but it got attention. Yeah. Right. So anything that grabs attention, and the reality is people have shorter and shorter attention spans. In videos, people need to be hooked in the first few seconds. And if they're not, you're going to fail most likely. Market stats, things like these traditional ways of advertising in real estate just don't do it for us. So we take, like, to your point, the podcast especially is really interesting because, it's sponsored by the brokerage. And of course we can, take Exhibit, and we can take Michael Francis and Chris Voss and Sirhan, to your point, and we can apply those to entrepreneurship, business building, because the principles are all the same. In real estate, you're a marketer, right? You're in branding, right? You are in professional sales. So, it's really interesting. If you've listened to the Exhibit podcast, we talk about, taking principles and applying them to sales and branding and marketing, right? So that's what we do with the show. And we've got David Shing is dropping next week. And then we've got Patrick Bet-David the week after that. And then we've got Pharoah Monch, hip hop legend, things like that. And we're going to be talking about real estate. So anyways, branding, marketing, design, very, very heavy on that. And we think agents need to focus on that. I think it matters. I do.
So what does that process look like for an agent that's there? Or they come in, they have no idea who they want to be. How do you help them find that voice and establish their brand?
Oh man, so funny. So we perfect example. We had two agents last little while that I can think of. One was a professional basketball player. He joined the brokerage and he said, how do I incorporate basketball into my branding?
Nice.
It says, well, we have the best media team in the business. I really believe that. We got a really slick media team. So he worked with them and they created an actual logo for him with the basketball and how's it? I don't know how they did it. It looks genius because I thought this is not going to work. That's what I was thinking. It's not going to work. And it looks amazing. It looks so slick because he had to tap into, he's got a big,
huge network, I'm sure. Like if he's
huge.
played professional basketball,
he played in Europe and he played in overseas and in China. He's
instant credibility. See, this is the disconnect. A lot of agents, they want to be agents, and the second they become agents, the public doesn't trust them anymore because you're just going to try and sell me something, right? If you can be, again, if you could have a background, be a human being that happens to have an expertise in real estate, that's a different thing altogether, right?
Yeah, and then we had another agent. She's big into she's a personal trainer, but she also big into she wants to get into like kind of like these if you know Alberta, Canmore and Banff and things like that. And so she created branding that it actually slick, really slick with the mountains and everything in her name. And anyways, so there's different ways to approach it, right? But again, what makes you unique and what service and value. Yeah, more than that, what's more important is your unique selling proposition as an agent. I really believe in that. I think that's going to be more and more critical going forward. That's why we put so much emphasis on that. And it's not just real estate, it's every industry is being disrupted by USPs. So I think people need to pay attention to it.
Yeah. And this brings it full circle because everything we're talking about, I mean, if you create a digital avatar, exactly like you're talking about, and a visual representation of your brand, and it's your photo that I see on Clubhouse all the time, and I see a consistency of brand in your jacket and your posts that you're putting on Instagram and everything else. I mean, this is your digital avatar. You can take that right into the metaverse and augmented reality, and it will translate into the David Morrell that I see in front of me, right? And again, people, if you don't think we're actually living in this world today, you're already behind. But the two other topics I want to talk about, we got about 10 minutes left in the podcast, is one, crypto and real estate. I know, again, that's like a 3-hour topic at least, but we'll just talk high level, your thoughts on crypto and real estate, and then blockchain and efficiencies of transactions. Let's do the crypto thing first. So I think people now understand crypto is not magic. It's real. It's not going anywhere. What are your thoughts on how crypto is going to impact real estate? Yeah,
it's already impacting real estate, and everybody needs to get on this train or they're going to be left behind. So crypto is actually, it's funny because it's, recently, I mean, our company's been synonymous with crypto and real estate for a while now. I mean, I just did an interview with CBC actually 2 days ago about this. So they're doing a big piece on it. We've been in this space for years, actually. I think I first heard the concept of fractional ownership in real estate some years ago, the tokenization of real estate. And that actually led us down the rabbit hole of crypto. But what we found was, we spoke at it. The genesis of this was we actually figured out a way to offer it as a service to buyers, so we could transact in crypto. So if you had crypto holdings, particularly Bitcoin, and you wanted to transact in crypto or use your Bitcoin for deposits to purchase houses, then we would facilitate that. We spoke at a cryptocurrency or a blockchain convention a few years ago, and what we were finding was there was crypto millionaires everywhere, even back then, and they were using their funds to buy cars and boats, and they wanted to purchase real estate. So originally we thought this was a buyer offer. We'll figure out a way to, transact in crypto and use that as a buyer offer. What we quickly figured out was this is an incredible seller offer. It's a USP that applies particularly to luxury sellers. And what I mean by that is our website, so our company, we advertise all our properties in Canadian fiat currency as well as Bitcoin pricing, which at the time was actually somewhat revolutionary, believe it or not, right? It was. Are we live?
Yeah,
we're live. Oh wow, okay.
Marsh just dropped in.
Okay, we're live. I just noticed. I'm like, hey, what's up, Matt?
Yeah.
But it became a seller offer quite quickly because they could advertise their properties for Bitcoin pricing, etc., opening up their property to a new pool of international buyers. And as a result, we're getting calls from luxury sellers quite often, and even in marketplaces we don't serve. So I got a call from a luxury seller in New York. He wanted to sell 2 properties. For Bitcoin.
So would he open it up to Bitcoin and conventional purchasing? Like just say, hey, I don't care. I'll take Bitcoin or I'll take dollars.
Yeah. So you got a couple components here. One is somebody that just wants to flip their Bitcoin into real estate. So we, we partnered we don't actually handle the Bitcoin. So we have a partner that does that.
Okay.
We work with an exchange there, and then the lawyers that are on side and understand how the money's moving, right? So you have to have.
Well, there's a complexity because it's not
Yeah.
really, it's non-denominational money, right? Like there's
Yeah.
nobody that owns it. There's no country. It's not a currency from the same
That's
standpoint that the typical money markets are, right?
Yeah, so you still have to, you still have to follow all the rules of real estate in your province or city or whatever it is. You still have to do that in your country.
Yeah.
So there's that component. But what's interesting now, Justin, is that now we're getting sellers who are saying, we'll only accept Bitcoin for our property. Yeah, we have a seller in Toronto. He was like, I'll only accept Bitcoin. And you know what's happening? If you look at what's happening just monetarily, the declining value of the dollar, inflation, and things like that. So people are, they're putting their money into Bitcoin as a store of value. They're seeing the benefits of it. Companies have, I've said this before, have a treasury reserve problem, right? Like the declining value of where are you going to put your money? So that's why you're seeing big institutional adoption of cryptocurrency. But anyways, as it relates to
before we go to the next section, like what you just said is important because people are pulling their money out of stocks to put it in real estate because they're like, I want an actual asset. Now they're like, well, I don't even believe in the monetary system anymore, hence crypto. But Athena had a really good question that I want to touch on before. I don't know if you can read this or if it's backwards on your screen, but it says, hello from Montreal. How do you go about pricing in Bitcoin? So how do you price a property in Bitcoin versus your typical pricing model?
It fluctuates just like the dollar does. So there's
how quick are those fluctuations though? Is it daily?
No, it's to the second. Like I don't have, I'm not the developer, so I don't know how it works, but the dev team tweaks it somehow. I don't know.
Interesting. But like, say I'm making a purchase and I'm like, okay, I'm going to buy this unit or I'm going to buy this fraction now for this price. I'll do this deal. And then 10 seconds later, it's a different price.
Yeah. So that brings up another, again, this is a whole separate webinar, Justin, as you know, but there's ways to hold pricing in Bitcoin because the question is, well, it's so volatile, right? So you can do what's called a TWAP, which kind of holds.
It's terrible.
I know. TWAP, where you can it averages out the pricing over 7 days or whatever and gives you a value there. You can use stable coins. There's a lot of ways to do it. You put it into Tether and then move it. So again, kind of like an exchange rate. Yeah.
Interesting.
Similar. Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess that makes sense. And we won't get into the complexities now, but for the premise of it too. So people are selling properties. Some are only accepting crypto. So what's the next iteration of that?
That's where it gets really interesting is that piece, but you're seeing more of it. There's a lot more inquiries in this space. The funny thing is Canadians are actually really smart when it comes to this. Canadians are, I think a lot of Canadians have adopted crypto and they understand it more so than some of the other, maybe our neighbors to the south. I'm not sure.
Matt Lamarche, call me TWAB.
It's a P, a TWAB.
It's a P, yeah. Outside of the decentralization and transparency, what's the biggest benefit? Is it speed? People call done trawl all the time. I don't know what that means, Matt, but yeah, is it speed? What's the biggest benefit?
He's talking gibberish there on the last. I don't know what that was, but no, it's speed, it's efficiency. It's a lot cheaper to move the money around. You don't have the red tape of banks. You don't have to
security of transaction.
Oh man, security is just. That's a whole different topic. We could do a whole webinar on that. Everything is recorded on the blockchain, right? So there's a lot of applications to a lot of.
Wait a minute, you mean people can't backdate deals and initial things that weren't covered in time? I'm like,
well, there we go, blockchain.
That's the transition into blockchain, though. So anybody watching, what David and I are laughing about is what happens in real estate every single day. I'm hardcore about it with my clients. The amount of times I get contracts from other agents where it's an accepted agreement, the agreement's expired. And they're like, oh, just initial the change. I'm like, no. Guess what? Fresh agreement. Because guess what? Everything's timestamped now with, e-signatures. They don't realize it's audited. Commercial real estate agents are some of the worst at this. They backdate everything. They sign nothing in the right amount of time. And what David's going to speak about next is blockchain and how that's going to change everything. So can you provide a high level on blockchain and how you think it's going to impact real estate?
Yeah, so it's the tip of the iceberg here with blockchain and real estate. The natural application between blockchain technology, cryptocurrency, and real estate is just beginning. I think this is going to revolutionize real estate in a big way. A lot of the actual process of a real estate transaction can be somewhat clunky, right? Land transfer,
mortgage
transfer, mortgages, lawyers, that whole thing. Just something as simple as smart contracts, right, can eliminate a lot of the friction in a real estate transaction. So we think that is, that's coming about fast and furious. Where it gets really interesting is when we get into the tokenization of real estate, where if you can imagine freeing up equity in your property without going to a bank and putting that on the blockchain and then allowing secondary trading. So people can actually buy a portion of the property That's a company that we're launching soon. It's I don't want to shill for it or anything like that, but there's some really interesting applications in real estate, the tokenization of real estate, where debt and equity become liquid.
Well, let's pause there for a second again. I get excited when I'm pausing you. That's why I'm jumping in. But people are already refinancing their homes, pull equity out to buy investment properties, to flip them, to make more money. This is happening anyways in the regular markets. And you're not a shill. I know you personally. And again, it's no different than brokerages. Like technically people could deem us competitors, but it's a collaborative universe, right?
Yes.
The people that are going to come to me are going to come to me. People are going to go to you, are going to go to you. So you can speak freely about whatever you want to talk about.
I appreciate that. No, it's brand agnostic.
Yeah.
You always hear that on Clubhouse. It's brand agnostic.
But the people, the ones that actually mean it, and the other ones that are like, now click my funnel and go down my pipeline, right?
Well, it's funny. Like I never, you don't do it either. Like we don't mention our brokerage on. I
actively try not to. And like even when I drop the action guides, I have such a hard time, right? Because we pump out these action guides and they're like storytelling, they're productivity hacks, they're things that I actually build for myself. And I'm like, you can have it for free. I don't sell any courses. I have such a hard time sharing those because I'm like, I feel like I'm pitching and I just don't want to be that guy, right?
Well, it's the same thing. Like, it's funny you brought that up. Like, we have these very high level masterminds every 2 weeks, right? Where we bring in guest speakers. David Ching is at our mastermind next week. And I just invite, agents in general from any brokerage that wants to attend, or, anybody in branding and advertising. And again, it's not pitching. I think it's really cool to have a guest speaker like that. So we invite them. But anyways, so getting back to tokenization in real estate, this is where it gets really incredible. This is where, it's funny. I saw a number the other day. World real estate holdings around the globe, real estate is valued at about $260 trillion, right? So, and it's the biggest asset class on the planet. If you can imagine, the day where you can like take your phone and you can open up and you can, shop for real estate and buy, $5,000 worth of a project on your phone. Bing,
I own part of that building now, but
exactly. Can you imagine that unlocks? That unlocks a lot for the everyday person.
Consumer power.
You no longer have to be an accredited investor. You no longer have to. It gets very, very interesting.
And so blockchain. The other thing I wanted to mention, and I know that you'll have some insights on this, the amount of bloat, government bloat, system bloat, the amount of people that I want to invest $100 in Facebook stock. Yet I'm paying like $50 of that $100 down the supply chain to all the different people that have their hands in my pocket. Blockchain is going to get rid of a lot of that, right? A lot of the people that are getting paid through the transaction and the inefficiency of the transaction. And it's just going to be much smoother for the consumer.
Can you imagine? Like, I think people, anybody who's, gone out and got a crypto wallet and played around with $100, it sees how easy it is to move money around and send it to you with a QR code, bang, for a few cents. Yeah. Right. Can you imagine? Like,
well, I'm looking at doing a Prime coin right now too, because I might as well, right? It's so cheap that it's easy for me to do, and I can just hand it out to my clients, and then they have one, and then whatever I want to do with that, maybe it gives them a discount in the future. Who knows, right? But there's no reason not to do this. I do want to be respectful of your time.
Oh, cool.
Where would you send people to get educated on this topic? Like, what are resources you go to understand this space?
Oh, that's a good question. We're just networked really well. So, I have, we've got a lot of friends and colleagues in the space that, we consult with us. So, in terms of a site, I don't really know. I think people just need to maybe reach out, if they have any questions about real estate and crypto. I can get there. You as well can answer those questions, but that's fine. You can hit me up on social media or something like that. Email us.
I'm a white belt at crypto, so don't call me, but go find David on Instagram. Please go support the podcast. I was going to say the podcast is fire. I love it.
Oh yeah.
Go give it a review as well too, if you happen to be in that space. I know, David, I'll have you back on. We're going to do a deeper dive. Definitely. I think we can get into the intricacies of the blockchain and the crypto. We can do a whole episode just on that.
We need to, because we're going fast and furious into that space. We think it's going to, really change the game in real estate. And it's going to start in Canada. It's going to start in Canada.
Okay. So get this. So one thing that David does, there's an open space that I host on Clubhouse called Practical and Tactical. David's always super nice on a Monday. I don't know why I booked it on Mondays. Everybody's busy day of the week, but David always pops in. Matt does as well. And I asked the roundtable. So it's a power panel, I call it. It's typically like Andy T, Glenda Baker, Ray's there, David's there. I'll throw you in the group chat as well. Matt's there. This week, I asked them, what do you guys want to talk about on Monday? Because it's not my room. Like, I just host the table. And they're like, let's talk about crypto. And your name was mentioned. They're like, talk to David. I'm like, David, you're coming on Monday and we're doing a deeper dive, so we can carry this on Monday if you want.
Let's do it.
That's so synergistic. That's awesome. Thank you so much, brother. I want to give you some value. Where can I push my audience to connect with you? Where's the one place that they can come reach out?
Well, yeah, actually my Instagram is a big focus of mine recently. So that's where Morrell YYC. I don't know why I haven't changed it, but Morrell YYC. Of course, our website, greaterpropertygroup.com.
Okay.
And there's a lot of resources on there, a lot of interesting stuff. And of course, Justin, thank you very much for having me. Big fan of yours. You know that. Love the show.
Yeah, you're one of the real ones. I can't wait until I'm traveling all over North America. We will connect. You will see these two boys in person one day, and we will cause havoc.
Well, I'm in the old port right now. I'm in the old port. Nothing like Montreal in the fall. You know this.
I do know this. Well, Montreal is wonderful. We'll go to Diama, or we'll go to one of the many great restaurants. So many good spots. But awesome, brother. Thank you so much for coming on.
Thanks, Justin.
All right. See ya.
Peace.